In a previous video, we created a new KB, we saw the predefined domains, including semantic domains, we changed the deploy to cloud property to prototype in the cloud, we created two transactions, a transaction for speakers with message and error rules, and a transaction for countries. We applied the work with for web pattern, and we tested everything in runtime through the web developer menu. Now the time has come to start developing the part corresponding to smart devices. So, we return to GeneXus. We go to the country transaction, and now we move to this other tab, Work With for Smart Devices. Upon saving, we apply this pattern. Note that here we have the hierarchical structure we had before, and positioned on the list mode, here we have the editing screen of the corresponding object. In fact, upon saving, in the folder view, we will see what happens. We can see that this entry was also created under the country object. Except that, as opposed to the entry for the web pattern, this is not an instances folder, but a folder of the object Work With Devices. We can clearly see the difference. While here we had this entry that was the instance file, and here we had the implemented objects, this one here is already the instance file, and the objects implemented are 2 in 1. In fact, we can edit the pattern by either accessing the transaction's pattern selector or by double-clicking on the object, where we see that we have it for editing, independently for the transaction, but it's the same. Another aspect to point out, in the country transactions properties, the business component property is on. In addition to this property, GeneXus also turned on another two properties, exposes and web services, and also the REST protocol for the business component. This is because data handling in smart device applications is done through a business component. We can also see that new elements have been created in Folders view, and the Smart Devices API folder, which is crowded with new objects. If we go to Preferences, we will see that the generator for smart devices has been added. In its properties, we will see that it will be created by default for Android and for iOS, but the main default platform will be Android. We will apply the pattern in the MySpeaker transaction as well, just as we did with country, or directly by going to the transaction in folder view, and then right-clicking on Apply Pattern, Work With for Smart Devices. We see that the object has been added. Also, we will see that there are new domains that will be used specifically by applications for smart devices. And what do we need now to try our smart device application? We must create the application's point of entry, that is to say, the dashboard. So let's create it. And we'll call it My EventDay. If we go to the Items node and right-click, we will be adding a new action, and this will invoke the object Work With Devices Country. The description that we want to be viewed for this option will be country, and we will specify the image corresponding to this option on the dashboard. Let's import this icon from a file, and we'll call the image object Tab Countries. Then we press OK. Likewise, we will add an action that corresponds to the invocation to the other Work With. Let's call it speakers. And again, in the same manner, we will insert an image, tab speakers, for the option on the dashboard. Note that also, by default, the main program property appears as true. And now we save. And it's all ready for execution, so F5. As usual, we see that the developer menu is retrieved, except that now, in addition to the links to the application's objects, there were also these QR codes. The QR codes appear down here, which are disabled for the time being, and will correspond to the compiled application. They will encapsulate the URL where the compilation to be downloaded is located. And also, the QR selected encapsulates the URL of the web server path where the existing mains of the smart device application are located. This is in order to enable access to them from the KBN. So, what is the KBN? It's similar to the web developer menu in the way of a browser for smart device objects. KBN stands for Knowledge Base Navigator. Here, in this KBN, we can see that there is only one link to the My EventDay object, the dashboard. Why is this so? Because it's the only main object in our application for the time being. However, in the developer menu, the objects don't necessarily have to be main to appear. In the result of our F5, we will see that, following the developer menu, the Android emulator was also retrieved with the KBN we referred to. And why was this? Because by default, the main platform of smart device generation will be Android, and we don't have a device connected to our computer. Later, we will see how to prototype directly on the device. So, as we said, it'll show the URLs of all main objects for smart devices. In this case, we only have the My EventDay dashboard. When we execute it by doing tab, we can see the two items we had specified. When we tap on the item corresponding to countries, it opens the list of the work with. From there, if we tap on an element on the list, for example, Uruguay, we get the details on that country. Both its general section and the section corresponding to speakers from that country, that is, the related information. Then, if we tab on these, we will be taken directly to the detail of the work with of my speakers to be shown in view mode, the detailed information on that particular speaker. By scrolling through the screen, we will find that, next to the fields corresponding to the speaker's country, telephone, address, and email, we have some icons. If we tap on the countries, we are taken to the detail of the work with countries, to show us the detailed information on that country. To go back, we use the emulator's back button found in every Android device. If we go to the phone now, it'll open the device's application to make phone calls. Here we can see the phone semantic domain in action, enabling us the integration with that native application in the device. And we return with back. When we tap on the address, we get a Google map installed on the device. And if we tap on the mail, we will be asked which of the email applications installed on the device we want to use to send a message to that address. This shows us then the semantics included in the corresponding domains. While in a speaker's detail screen, we might want to modify the data there. To do this, we tap on the button that appears on top and access the edit screen of the section general. We may modify any of this data. We can also access that screen when we select the Insert button from the list of speakers. And now we will choose to insert a new speaker. While here, this edit screen is the one called an Insert mode. In the other case we saw before, the call was made in Update mode. Let's suppose that we want to delete the speaker's name. When we try to save, we will get an error. Where is that message and that error specified? The answer is in the MySpeaker transaction through the rule we just defined. So what is happening here? This means that the business component is being executed in order to update information. If, for example, we now try to modify the country, we will see it has this icon here, and if we tap on it, we will be calling a selection list to select the country of our choice. So just as in web, the selection lists were created for the primary keys and for the foreign keys in Smart Device Applications objects of the Smart Device Panels type, which will be created to implement the selection lists corresponding to the primary keys. For example, I choose Canada, and we see that the value is retrieved automatically. I'm not going to save the data. Now, if we go to the list again, we will see that we can either do a search by name, or we could filter speakers by, for example, country. We might, for example, want to view only speakers from the US. We can see that the filter has been included automatically by foreign key, even when we have done nothing in this respect. Depending on the transaction's attributes, more or less filters will be included. In the case of an existing attribute of the date type, then a filter by date would have been included. We can also do searches by different attributes. Also note that the list information is coming out sorted by speaker name. All of this is customizable and is part of what we will be studying in this course. If we go to GeneXus, we will see all that information on the list grid and among the properties, under the data group, we will see this order property that defines the order to be by speaker name and this search property that contains all the attributes by which the search will be done and the filter we saw by country ID. We can add and remove attributes to the search as well as advanced filters. This has been a brief demo of how easily we can start developing smart device applications. We will now go on to study the architecture in these applications.